Hello, thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel, Reverend MeeLing. I've been known by many names: Reverend MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Susan MeeLing, Lady Dori Belle, Lady MeeLing. Quite a few things. As far as names, obviously Mom, having two children, so Mom, but so this is part 3 of the aspects in reference to what had occurred in reference of McCoy Elementary School, the treatment to my daughter, my son, as well as myself from certain individuals in Carrollton, Texas. The names that I have in specific would be Tamara Hatcher, the first grade teacher, the guidance counselor Angela Reiter, and the principal Dawn Rink back in 2008, 2009, and 2010 and 2009 in reference to Tamara Hatcher, the first grade teacher, but Angela Reiter, the guidance counselor, as well as the principal Dawn Rink in those years. I feel sorry for anybody who has to have any of those individuals as staff members, my personal opinion. Same thing in reference to any of the adult volunteers that had lost my daughter on the field trip at the Fort Worth Zoo in 2010. I had wrote a lot on various platforms in 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012 in specific to what was going on. So on FetLife, which is an adult platform, but there are people who have children, and it was a parenting forum in regards to people talking about parenting while being in the lifestyle. On Facebook, I had discussed the various aspects in a more generalized, broad way. And then on Cafe Mom, I had done the same because I had to constantly be ready to respond to any lawyer's email or school district email. Those who have ever had to deal with certain aspects, you know. If your lawyer contacts you, you better respond quickly. Whereas, they're whatever in that regard. So, in part 1 and part 2, I've gone over quite a few aspects. So, getting to part 3, before I go into that, so I had, my daughter was in Maridale Residential Treatment Center, and that was outside of Austin in the state of Texas. She had been there for the maximum amount of time by the insurance company standards. I had requested from the school district to put whatever finances into a specific account. That way I didn't touch the money. That way I didn't mess anything up, and they would deal with what they did wrong. The individuals that were to blame for that. And so I did have a varying set of requests in reference to the fact that I had to sell my house in order to maintain various aspects and pay for certain things. And then the house price differences. I had, on top of the aspects of the healthcare finances in a specific account, I had requested any aspects that my son had to deal with because of that particular situation be set up in a similar way for him to be able to take care of, and that way I didn't mess up any numbers. Not only that, to also ensure that my son and my daughter got the proper care. Because the irony of ironies, hypothetically, you could take into a look at this. Hypothetically, because that school district, their lawyers had chosen not to do that one little aspect, well, enjoy those taxes that you now have to pay. Hypothetically speaking, law firm, and more specific, the individuals involved who caused problems for my daughter and my son, as well as myself. See why you should listen to my warnings? Anyway, be respectful. I wasn't the only person in Carrollton, Texas with a military background. My son and my daughter were not the only individuals being dependents of someone who has a military background. Just going to throw that hypothetical quinky-dink out. However you choose to view that. However, my ex-in-laws, by the time my daughter was put into Meridell Residential Treatment Center, they were not nearly as involved by their choice, because my ex-sister-in-law and her children and my ex-mother-in-law were still more concerned about the death of my dead ex-husband, their dead sibling, so they didn't want to pay attention to the living. Meaning my son and my daughter, who by extension of their dead relative were the living. They could have very much assisted their choices. I understand that I am the ex-wife who lived. However, just as I did everything to not be the stereotypical ex-wife, I could not force them to not be stereotypical ex-in-laws. And so, my other ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, similarly to my ex-sister-in-law, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, was more focused in regards to their dead brother in the most disrespectful manner, because if you go through prior videos where I discuss certain aspects, they put a bunch of religious symbols into their dead brother's casket, knowing that he was an atheist, and then had his casket taken to St. Patrick's Cathedral in Fort Worth, Texas. So even in reference of the dead aspect, they had absolutely no respect. And I guess that technically should have been a sign for me in reference to my children. So, you know, I have this thing of, despite the fact that, yes, obviously, dead ex-husband, that whole thing, I didn't disrespect his casket. I didn't disrespect the Holy Roman Catholic Church either. I actually gave them a warning, and the priest, I have a feeling he actually did lift open that casket. Whether or not he kept those particular religious aspects in there, or, you know, buried them with my dead ex-husband's casket, he at least had done the funerary rites in the cafeteria instead of in the cathedral, as I had requested and given a warning of, because I wasn't raised Catholic. However, I did go to a Catholic high school, and while I was not taught about funerary rites in that, you know, particular aspect, I at least had the respect, not just despite him being my dead ex-husband in that regard, but being respectful to all of the different veterans who had passed on and their family members and friends who would go to visit them, as well as the different spiritual and religious aspects thereof. So, you know, at least I can say that. I know that my ex-in-laws cannot. Realistically, I would guesstimate Laurel Land Funeral Home in Fort Worth, Texas probably has video cameras that would have seen that. Not forgetting the pictures my ex-sister-in-law Susie Marie Nichols Lopez and Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen were so excited to take family pictures there. To each their own. I still do not understand that to this day in June of 2020. And that was back in January of 2008. Just throw that out there. That being said, so this is the way the aspects went after the field trip. My daughter was in University Behavioral Health Denton Center for the maximum amount of time that the insurance allowed, 30 days. Then she was in Meridell Residential Treatment Center in outside of the area of Austin, Texas, for the maximum amount of time, either 4 to 6 months, depending. Then she was able to be with my son and I in the rental house while my house in Carrollton was on the market to be sold because of the problems because of the individual. So, further discrimination because, I look like I do and I don't look like I would fit into Carrollton, Texas. However, there were people that just did not want to see that or acknowledge that that was and is the reality. Not just the military background, but my physical aspects. I mean, I could be wrong, and they weren't paying attention to my physical aspects. However, with social media, if there was anything, whether it was through email, text message, on any social media platform where they, discussed my physical appearance, I would guesstimate that that would instantly prove me to have been 100% accurate back then in this day to this point in time. That being said, my daughter was no longer, she was not in the Meridell Residential Treatment Center, which the doctors, similarly to University Behavioral Health in Denton, were very much surprised how much I did to work with not just my daughter to make sure that she was okay, but also the medical staff to make sure that everything was taken care of. Because of the regulations for TRICARE at that time, within a, 400-mile radius, I had to travel if it was within that 400-mile radius. So being in Carrollton, Texas, and then the Meridell Treatment Facility in Austin, Texas, I had to drive. And twice a week at that point for that 4 to 6 months. And at one point in time, Dr. Jackson had pulled me in for the appointment 2 times a week. But one particular week showed up and Dr. Jackson said, Susan, I need to talk with you before bringing in Lydia. Okay, what's going on? She said, there was a situation that happened. Okay, what happened? And she knew all the stuff as far as what was going on with McCoy Elementary School and Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. We discussed that at length. That would actually be why the appointment times were much longer, those 2 days a week, than the average appointment time, because I did not hold anything back from any of the doctors. I let them know to try to make sure my daughter was squared away while making sure my son was squared away while doing the best for myself as a mom. So Dr. Jackson said, well, Lydia had been attacked. And I was like, what happened? She already has been dealing with a few things. What happened? And, as a mom would. And she said that Dr. Jackson said, well, the other students paid attention to the schedule of the medical staff. And I said, okay, what happened? She said, well, because you go and visit your daughter every appointment, like you've never missed one appointment. I'm like, yeah, because I want to make sure. And the doctor said, well, yeah, the other students got jealous that you did that. Said, okay, why would they be jealous? And she explained that the majority of parents would either not be able to make the appointment schedule, or they say they were going to be there and then not show up or whatever. And so Lydia was the only child that had constant, no worry, no concern. She knew I was going to be there no matter what. And so the doctor explained to me that the children singled her out. And when the staff was doing the shift change, they locked the door and then went after my daughter. And I said, and then what happened? Because I know my daughter. I know what I taught her. So how many individuals are hurt? My daughter. And Dr. Jackson said, well, all of the students had to get medical treatment. Sounds about right. It's my daughter. Did she stop herself, though? Because there's that varying degree. And Dr. Jackson said, well, the orderlies, how many did it take to take care of that? She said, well, there were about 6 or 10 orderlies that your daughter, my daughter, yeah, they had to get medical treatment. And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a surprise. That's my daughter. Now what? And she was completely surprised that I was not fazed at all by that. I was like, it's my daughter. I mean, I know how I was when I grew up. I know how my now dead ex-husband was when he grew up, and he did not have the strength that I have. However, when he would get into a fight, he never knew how to stop himself. So there would be damages in that regard, whereas I knew how to stop myself. I've discussed on prior official videos in reference to the St. John Vianney High School bus incident, the Taekwondo competition, as well as the Taekwondo in reference to Rob Castle for specific examples, as well as Crystal Lake South High School and that example. So there's quite a few that I've discussed over the aspects. And so whereas my dead ex-husband, when he was alive and he started fights or got into fights, I didn't start fights. I defended myself. He started fights, he got into fights, and then when people went after him, then he didn't know when to stop because he just refused to. That was his thing. So when I was speaking about my daughter with the doctor, I was like, okay, well, which of my dead ex-husband didn't. So she had my rage in regards to when having to defend herself. And then she had the aspects in regards to not knowing how to stop because of my dead ex-husband. And so the Dr. Jackson she had told me that about 6 or 10 orderlies had to get medical treatment because of my daughter. Well, okay. Are they okay? And not being rude, it was just one of those like, let me understand what's going on. And so she had to be put into isolation because of them not getting the full story initially, and ridiculously, unacceptably in my opinion, she had to deal with that. And so it took her a while to be able to feel comfortable with all of the individuals that she was forced to be with afterwards, because she had been singled out and attacked the way she did. And so she had difficulties being able, like any normal human being would, by the way. I mean, if you really think about it, she was a child at that time. Any normal human being who would constantly be singled out and targeted in that regard just because of doing good, yeah, you could. I am no different. If I were constantly singled out, you better get down on both knees and pray. Just a personal opinion. In fact. Nonetheless, in that regard, in my attempts to figure a way to kind of bring balance to that, I said, well, what if I were to get, since I know that there are certain things that cannot be undone in that regard, is it allowed for me to go pick up like a bunch of teddy bears? And they don't have zippers, they don't have strings, but like the children could have that to kind of, as a way to kind of deal with certain things. She said, we cannot do that because they cannot know that you did that. I was like, well, what if they don't have like my name on them? What if I just go and get like these teddy bears or stuffed animals or something and just drop them off and that sort of thing? And she looked at me, she was like Santa Claus? I was like, well, I guess technically you could think of it in that way. I mean, in certain regards. And she was like, oh my God, Susan, really? And I was like, what? I'm trying to figure out how to actually, like, get this taken care of as best as possible for not just my daughter at this point, but also my daughter and then the other kids, as well as your staff. When you think about it, she was like, that is so kind and generous, but because of the regulations. It's like, regulations should be changed. But my opinion, is what it is. So my daughter came into that appointment and we spoke and everything. And, I told Dr. Jackson before my daughter had come into the appointment, I told her, I said, I taught my children if they are attacked and singled out, they are to defend themselves as best as they can. And in that regard, my daughter had certain attributes of my dead ex-husband, and that would be that situation. It's a real quick point of other aspects in reference to my son. When in Washington State, there was a male who had attacked him and his friends as they were on their way back home after school in high school from Steelicum. And, he came and told me about this. He said that this guy had continued on all these different things and threw stones and sticks and stuff like that. And I'm, okay, what happened? What happened, handsome? You tell me what happened. This was off school grounds? And he said, yeah, it was off school grounds. All right, well, there's that. What happened? And the whole time, my son has his hands behind his back. I'm just like, okay, what's going on? You let me know what happened. And he said, Ethan wouldn't stop, da 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 da. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, I don't want you to be mad at me. And I said, you taking a long time to explain to me without, because I know you're kind of skipping around certain things, so why don't you just get to the point? And he just, he wouldn't stop, so turned around and punched him. I look at my son, I'm like, okay, then what? Well, he stopped. Okay, then what? My hand hurts. But you're okay otherwise? Yes. Your friends are okay? Yes. And your hand hurts? Yes. Don't know what I should do. Get some ice. I'll make an ice bag for you. But it hurts so bad. Well, handsome, are you accustomed to punching somebody in the face? No. Okay. Where'd you hit him in the face? Hit him in the hardest part of the face. It's like, oh, okay, so you're not used to punching that. You don't normally do that. No. Okay. I'm getting the ice pack and stuff like that, making the ice pack and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's going to swell, and then, but it hurts. Yes, I know it hurts. When you punch somebody in the hardest part of their face, it's gonna hurt a little bit, but you don't have any issues, you're good to go. But it hurts. Yes, I know that is something that happens when you're not accustomed to having to do that. So, and so the following day, the teacher sent him to me after some stuff, and my son said, well, the teacher said, oh, does the teacher have a degree or any experience with medical stuff? No? Oh, okay. And fine, we'll go to JBLM. They're just, at most, they're going to do an x-ray, put your hand in a splint, and then, you're going to be good to go. But, okay, fine. Teacher that doesn't have any experience or any background in any medical thing, but sure, and then of course during that time frame I'm thinking about all the stuff when it came to McCoy Elementary School, and so go to JBLM, check him into the emergency room, get taken to the back. He tells the medical staff what happened, gets sent for an x-ray, gets back, the doctor is just so, what happened, taking a look at the x-ray. He's like, you don't have a fracture, and I'm just leaning against the back of the wall, and I'm just And doctor speaks with him and goes, well, what did your mom say? Did your mom freak out? And my son just, being a teenager, my mom said that because I'm not used to hitting people and doing this, that it could hurt. The doctor looks at him and looks back at me, and I'm just, go ahead, doc. Go ahead. And then the doctor said, well, what we can do is put your hand in a splint. I'm leaning against the wall. My son just, that typical teenager thing. I know that there are those who understand that. And doctor explains a few things and then says, well, are you used to hitting people in the face? My son, no. I'm just leaning. Go ahead, doc. Go ahead. High five, but go ahead. My son is listening to the doctor as he goes on, well, if you're not accustomed to hitting people in the face, or are you accustomed to hitting hard things when you punch? My son, no. I'm leaning back. That's right. You get him, doc. So then the doctor says, well, I looked at the x-ray, and so what we're going to do is we're going to put your hand in a splint and, just put some ice on it. I mean, you really don't need the splint, just as a safety precaution for your teacher. I'm leaning back on, get him, doc. Get him, doc. In my thoughts, I didn't say that out loud, obviously. And so my son, sitting on the doctor team. So then the doctor realizes this and he goes, so what did your mom have to say? My mom said exactly what you just asked me. She asked me, and she knows I'm not used to hitting people in the face. And she brought up how I play tennis, and not in a bad way, but it's not the same as punching somebody in the face, and blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. And the doctor's like, well, sounds like your mom's actually kind of smart. And Jane's as a teenager. And so, though there are plenty of adults who do that too, there's no denying that. And so, I'm no different. I've done it. Nonetheless, the doctor was just, well, do this, do that. And my son on the dude, And the doctor goes, your mom told you all that, huh? Yes. High five, doc. Didn't want to waste your time, but cool, thanks for, getting this squared away, that whole thing. Thanks, da-da-da. My son got squared away. And then, understood. So in that, in reference to 2016 or 2017 when that happened, as far as my son was concerned, in regards of my daughter, in comparison, my son being able to calm a little bit, and my daughter just going on in that regard. And so Dr. Jackson at Meridale Residential Center was just, okay, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't be as involved, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I'm doing everything I can. And she's like, I know. Well, after my daughter was released from there, after 4 or 6 months, then there was not a time longer than 5 weeks before my daughter had to be taken back to a acute care center. And then after several months of that, then my daughter was in the position in which she needed to be in a residential treatment center again. And because of the background, as far as what had occurred in her medical records, the doctors had spoken with the insurance company, and the insurance company said, okay, well, we found 3 different locations that will accept your daughter. There is Arkansas, there is Nevada, and there is South Carolina. And I looked at I'm like, nowhere in Texas, there's no other facility. She can't go back to Meridale. And no, they don't have the capacity to handle the situation. That is unacceptable. That is unfortunate. Because Dr. Jackson actually would be able to assist with that in comparison. And so then, in regards to that, I spoke with my son, and my son was like, well, which one is closer to the state of Texas? So, well, technically Arkansas. And he said, okay, well, I'd rather Arkansas then. So, well, okay, then the next aspect is we would have to either move closer or move to Arkansas. And he said, well, I'd rather, is there a way to be closer to some of my friends instead? If we move to the DFW area, yeah, I can drive from Dallas-Fort Worth to Arkansas, Little Rock for the appointment, and then drive back. It's going to be similar to the beginning portion if we do it that way. My son said, well, I'd rather that. All right, make that happen. So I did. To make it easier, my daughter was in pinnacle point for the maximum amount of time at that residential treatment center. And Dr. Browne and I spoke for quite a bit of time. And she knew from Dr. Jackson how I would do everything possible to make sure I was out there, do what needed to be done, take care of not just my daughter, but also my son, so on and so forth. And, well, then she was released because of the insurance aspects. And then she was, unbeknownst to me until moving to that area, Irving, apparently, despite it having its own independent school district, they changed the district lines. And I just so happened to be in an apartment complex that was within Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. So because of that, I hoped a whole bunch because of the fury in that regard. I do not deny that. I did not discuss that, but I very much did. Still do. And in a different way in certain regards. But, that fury and rage is what it is. And so I focus my energy where I can so that I am calmer as best as I can. And so, in that regard, then there were the aspects where moved to another apartment, and it just so happened to be when I was looking for an apartment that was not within the district lines, they moved the district lines again. And not only did they do that, then I was also across the field from the law firm that was defending the school district. When I found that out, because I was accused of choosing that. I didn't even know they had the location there. As far as I understood, their location was in Dallas. So I hoped a lot because of their arrogance. And until that's calmed down, I'm just going to continue hoping. And I have different ways of hoping, but it's still hope nonetheless. And so, probably should relinquish those issues. For those who know they do not have the legal right to me. Just saying. And should probably take care of that justice aspect. That being said, nonetheless, just throw that out there. It's safer when I hope in a better way. Kind of like it's safer when I'm in a better mood. Nonetheless. So my daughter was in and out again of acute care facilities once she was released from Pinnacle Point. And then had to move because of the aspects of Patrick Kennedy in that regard, which really quickly, what some people did not know at that time, Patrick Kennedy, my ex-boyfriend, had wanted to do a ritual. I was like, I don't know if you really want to do that. And similarly to my now dead ex-husband, as well as similarly to, Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., I gave warnings like, if you want to do ritual, we should probably discuss that in full because you hide anything from me in regards to the ritual you want to do. And it's not going to come out the way you want it to. So I recommend you be truthful before we go do ritual. And he told me all that he wanted to do. I was like, are you telling me the full truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And he said, yeah. You sure you want to do this? I told you everything I should. Okay. And so, burnt a few candles, and there was a skull. And I looked at him, and I said, well, that is your answer to what you did not tell me the truth of. And he looked at me and, what do you mean? That skull that formed is letting you know that you really messed up not telling me the truth. And so dealing with those repercussions. It's a very bad idea to lie to me. Since you're friends with Philly, you should ask. And so shortly after that, then there was the issue with him putting a shotgun in my face. And then me doing what I could to pack everything up and move to San Antonio. I'm in that situation with Fort Sam Houston and then Laurel Ridge in regards to my daughter. And then the insurance company dropped my daughter from TRICARE. And all I have been doing to prevent my daughter from having to go to state-run facilities was gone. And so in the end months and days in specific of 2012, I had to sign the paperwork to relinquish my parental legal rights to my daughter because the insurance, she wasn't getting better. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do everything I could to help that situation and get it better for my daughter as well as my son. However, with the lack of insurance, my daughter suffered more because of what occurred because of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District, McCoy Elementary School, the particular employees and volunteers thereof. And in turn, that meant my son and I suffered as well. And so, at that time, I was dating a guy who actually lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, like in between. And the day that I had to sign the paperwork, which was after a individual from Child Protective Services asked me what type of mom I am. Well, he and his partner were very much educated not to ask me a question like that. Because if he had read the file, he would have known. And so he was educated real quick because he had an attitude. The other guy, Luis, he when his partner had said, "And what type of mom are you?" with an attitude to me, Luis, I would guesstimate, actually did read the file and just got up and walked over to the window and just looked out the window like, not the one to ask that question. And so I slid the table out of the way, which is better in comparison to Illinois. And then I picked up the chair and moved it closer to that individual, and I sat back down, and I leaned back, and I asked that CPS guy, "Do you really want to ask me that question? Or do you think you should read the file and then ask in a different way?" That guy, "I want to know, what type of mom are you?" Then I would guesstimate my face got as red as my hair. And I know I was hot because I started sweating. And, that was probably the first time I actually started sweating in the state of Texas. Irony, except for when I was pregnant with both of my children individually. And so I went from leaning back to, well, let me tell you what type of mom I am. I am not some crackhead hoe that you're accustomed to dealing with. I am the type of mom who has actually put my children first. I am the type of mom who, despite dealing with my own medical issues, have done everything humanly possible to ensure the safety of not just my daughter, but also my son. I am the type of mom who sold my house that I had purchased to be able to leave to my son and my daughter after making all sorts of stuff for an overall sort of way, in a short-term and long-term sort of way. I am the type of mom who, despite the fact that I was discriminated against, and that meant my children were discriminated against because of how I look and my military background and so on and so forth, I am the type of mom who kept my cool up until this moment where you want to ask me what type of mom I am. So I am the type of mom who did all that, traveled back and forth from Carrollton, Texas to Austin, Texas, back to Carrollton, Texas in one day, twice a week, before having to put that house that I described onto the market to be sold for far less than what I paid for before the modifications. Not forgetting those, by the way. I am the type of mom who went to every single appointment. I am the type of mom who did this. I am the type of mom who not only did that, but when my daughter was put into a hospital in Arkansas, I am the type of mom who took both my daughter and my son into consideration despite my own comfort level. I am the type of mom who then traveled from Irving, Texas to Little Rock, Arkansas, back to Irving, Texas, twice a week in one day, each time. I am the type of mom who made sure to be at both hospitals' weekend appointments that would be allowed. I am the type of mom who, after all of that, then moved back to the city of San Antonio to do all sorts of other stuff, which, you know, the insurance company, so on and so forth. I am the type of mom who did all of that, plus so much more. So how dare you ask me what type of mom I am? You better recognize who I am. Because I am not the typical type of mom or egg donor that you seem to think I am. I am that mom that you just offended by asking me what type of mom I am. And I lean back. I mean, I said a few other things, but yeah, okay, there we go. So, yeah. And I also added, I am the type of mom who called CPS on the situation multiple times. I am the type of mom who had asked the doctor to also call CPS so that way we could do all this sort of stuff. I am the type of mom, da-da-da-da, and all that stuff. And then, you know, just, so what do you have to say to what type of mom I am? And that guy just blink, blink, and his face went so, like, translucently clear, and he just kind of looked at me and he goes, oh my God, yes? How may I help you? And he just, and then he tried looking back to Luis, and Luis is like, no, I can feel, no, how far out into the trees can I look? While doing it all by myself. It's another thing I told that guy when he asked me what type of mom I am. Didn't ask me that afterwards, I tell you what. He damn sure didn't ask me that afterwards. Because he was educated as to who I am. And so, you know, there weren't any criminal charges, obviously, because he realized, oh, no, you're not the type of mom that I thought you were, despite what you look like. Yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. And so, then the aspects of signing the documentation and going forward with that. And so I had asked my biological mother and father if they would watch my son, so that way I could deal with and process that sort of stuff. And Anna, my biological mother, I guess, we could do that. Now, mind you, she was a substitute teacher. She knew stuff that she could have helped me with. My biological sister, who toted her college degree, knew people that she could have asked that could have given me some answers. But because I didn't vote for then President Barack Obama, and I chose to vote for Senator McCain and Governor Palin, and then she didn't know, but I'm sure she figured I voted for Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. Because of that, that was her excuse to not help my children, her nephew and niece, while taking other credit that she didn't earn. And so I went to the guy's apartment that I was dating at the time, and he didn't respond initially, and there were some things that I was feeling that obviously had to do with what was going on with my daughter and my son, but I also felt like there was something wrong in regards to him. And so those who know the difference in the distance from San Antonio, Texas, I think he was living in Arlington. I got there in less than 2 hours because there was something that I felt, and on top of what was going on. And when I pulled into the parking lot, I couldn't hear his heartbeat. So I flew up the stairs and started banging on the door. And I couldn't hear his heartbeat. And so I did what I needed to, and I jolted his heart, utilizing some things that he already had in his apartment. And he woke up, and he stumbled over to the door, and he collapsed in my arms, and I carried him back into his apartment, and he didn't know all that at that point in time. And so then, after getting him awake and moving around, he and I went out to his patio, and he asked me what I was doing there, and I was like, well, there was some stuff that was going on I really needed to talk with you about, but I guess right now I can't speak with you about it. And then I started feeling the after effects of that. I was like, I have to call my biological mother. This is not going to go well. And he looked at me and was like, what's the problem? Like, you should go inside so that way you don't have to see me like this. He goes, what's the big deal? So I called my biological mother. And Matt wouldn't go inside. He stayed outside. And my biological mother knew that I had signed the paperwork that day. And, or the day before, one or the other. And, on the phone, she essentially told me to just get over having to sign my legal parental rights away. That why couldn't I just get over that? Why did I have to fight so much for something, as she said, wasn't important? And I was like, that's my daughter. That's your granddaughter. How are you telling me this? And she brought up, I told you to give up years ago. Why didn't you just give up? Because it's my daughter that I'm taking care of. And not just my daughter, but my son, that's his sister. And I told you back then, when you told me to give up, that my daughter and my son were not the only ones who had gone through this. To give up like that, no. And so my biological mother just started yelling about how pathetic she viewed me, and if I had just given up, that it would have been easier, and how I shouldn't care about my own children the way it was easy for her in regards to me. And I'm trying not to be a baby about it. And I'm trying to not show how much it hurt. And so I was focusing my attention, or I should say, I was focusing my energy. And it's like, I can't. I know you hated me for so many years, but why would you take that out on my daughter and my son? And she just went on and on and on, and you need to just get over it, you need to just, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, no, it is a huge deal. What is wrong with you? And, Matt was just sitting there, and he's looking at me, and he's just, and I just, don't pay attention to me crying. And he's like, you don't cry. Yeah, I know. Like, just stop. And, because he had only seen me in scuba diving. He had never seen, like, me be all, like, girly and crap. Like this. This, I can't even, like, say it's my contacts being annoying. And so, I tried reasoning with my biological mother. She started yelling. I said, you know what? I will make sure that James is squared away. You don't ever have to worry about it again. Don't worry about it. It's over. And Anna was like, oh, well, what do you mean? No, it's over. It's over. I'm done. I don't see how you can know what is going on and just ignore what you know is fact. Your own husband, my biological father, he could tell you what goes on in the state system and why I'm fighting and have been fighting to prevent my daughter from having to go through this. And you just don't care. How could you even look at your husband knowing what you are doing to my daughter. And you just don't care. She started yelling some more. I was like, that's it. You don't have to worry about it again. Don't bother. I mean, not unless you're actually going to change for the better, so. Contacted friend at the time. She said she'd go pick up James. She understood what was going on at the time. And she picked up James, let me know she had him. My biological mother just never had that regard. And so Matt looks at me afterwards and he's just like, and I'm like, don't. Don't. I was not coming over here to be this much of a titty baby. And he's just like, I don't really think you understand. Like, you're not being a titty baby. I'm like, yes, I am. And so he was wearing a fluffy robe. It was, he got it when he was in the Navy. And he just wrapped it around me, and I was just, I'm not trying to be a little bitch. And he's like, you are not being a little bitch, though you are little and you're a bitch. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know, is what it is. And so, whatchamacallit, unbeknownst to me, I did not know about online hacking or any of that. And so after getting back to San Antonio, received a message shortly after about how he didn't want to see me again and all these things that he viewed as wrong with me. And I was just, that's not what I need right now. But fine, okay. If you don't want to see me again, I understand. You saw me in this regard, fine. And so, the individuals that I had been friends with in the communities, or at least that I thought I was friends with, I sent out messages like, I can't even count how many I just, on Facebook, on FetLife, for the ones that I knew, nothing. No one. And I had known a female who went to jail because she stole garden gnomes out of people's yards, and all these people were there for her. And it, something so stupid in comparison to what was going on. So when the final paperwork was signed and I gave all of the copies of the healthcare documents to the CPS workers after they came to the apartment and all that sort of stuff, then there was a phone call in reference to a situation in one of the foster homes, and I was at Selma Veterans Healthcare Clinic when I got the call, and the family members were in the ICU, and nobody that I knew. I was actually forced, I had to contact my sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, to attempt to get her to try to have a semblance of something, and instead she just didn't have the time. It was too much and all that sort of stuff, and it was, I curse your existence. In a fit of rage, I did. You and everyone like you. Anything similar to what you are, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, I curse your name for what you did. Denying that. The message was approved by the CPS workers. They looked it over and they were like, yes, that was before the phone call in reference to all of the people in the foster family and ICU. And then I was told by Sandra Goodwin that I would be able to see my daughter at the NICS unit if I went. And so I went, and the nurse turned me away from seeing my daughter. Refused to let me go in. She took my daughter's suitcase, stuff in it. She just didn't care. And it was just, are you kidding me? So then when the initial court-appointed lawyer and I spoke, that guy later sent me an email message saying that he didn't think it was right. I viewed my daughter as a pet that could be returned to a pet store, and I was infuriated. I printed a bunch of stuff out, faxed it to the judge of the case in the San Antonio Family Court, and I got a new lawyer, is what that wound up being. A different court-appointed lawyer, and went and met with Ms. Cortez. Brought her all the documents because the guy named Robert didn't even want to see the documents. He didn't care. It's like, okay. Because, you know, he just looked at how I look physically, and that was the end of it. And then I had gone to the Stoney LaRue concert, and I know I'm getting this time frame out of order because of the aspects of, you know, female crap. And went to the Stoney LaRue concert, and that whole thing with Kevin and that group of females that stood by knowing that he was going to do that. I mean, his wife did say, I'm sorry, but mouthed it. And then I wound up meeting the male, Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr., who wound up getting me to change my opinion of going to Florida after the identity theft was found out. That whole thing, and just one thing on top of the other, on top of the other. Like, really, can I just get... And so, then dealing with that on top of that. And so then, again, when it came to the actual court date, the 6th of June, 2013, been dealing with that aspect because of McCoy Elementary School's employees not doing their jobs since 2008. Starting in May of 2008. All that stuff. 2 years after, in 2010, the aspects of, or just shy of 2 years, in 2010, the field trip. And so, 6th of June, 2013, I sent more messages, texted people, please, 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 I need support. And for those who actually know me, or at least at that time, me asking for support, that's a big deal. that's a big deal for me to actually ask for emotional support, to just be there. That's all. They knew they couldn't fix certain things. Yes, I had sent out emails and letters requesting help for the legal aspect, to try to get stuff taken care of, not just for my daughter and my son and myself, but others in that regard. But the emotional support, just be there. Too busy. I don't have the time. It's not worth it. It's not as big of a deal. The responses I got. Okay. Before the court date. So I dealt with it, and I did make a YouTube video from the laptop. It was I think it was the Red Vizio or whatever, from my YouTube Gmail account that I can't get into. Just don't have access to the cell phone because I was repeatedly told you need to change that because it's not different than a landline, and obviously that's apparently different. However, as many times as I've been lied to, how would I know at that point in time? It is what it is at this point. But yes, I was sitting on my back patio at the apartment in San Antonio, had the roll down blinds behind me. Because of the way I was sitting, I was not in my normal chair. And, yeah, nobody, not one person. And then, because of everything, I had to go and deal with more stuff as far as the USAA, because of the identity theft and the San Antonio police report, and on and on and on. And then winding up in Arizona. Gotta get a new cell phone because of that. And wind up in Washington State at the end of it. My now ex-boyfriend actually wanted to get my son and I to Alaska. That was his goal. And I had told I don't know how many people in person about, and shown the messages that I received online when they came over to my apartment of the threats I was receiving, how I was going to be kidnapped and kept at the foot of my captor's bed. What I was constantly threatened with, and more than just that, but that was the only one that I could remember. Irony. Again, nobody believed me at the time. I was told I was being over dramatic. It's not over dramatic when it's fact. You're over dramatic for not believing the truth, knowing that I cannot tell a lie. Just because you can doesn't mean I can. So, in Washington State, I worked on putting stuff together because, what proof? And so here you go, a whole bunch of proof. So here's the docket in regards to the day I actually had to. That nobody except my lawyer was there. Oh yeah, she was there. She actually was surprised because I wrote down notes in reference to different things for her to ask Sandra Goodwin and all that. And so, yeah, put that all together. So that way I could do what I could. The irony, I just saw Orlando in that whole regard, and the aspects of. So, instead of, just believing me when I said it in the beginning, giving the warnings over and over again. Well, what type of mom? I mean, I did see that CPS guy later, and he was not nearly as aggressive. That is for certain. There is no denying that. He was much more understanding. And so, I told the truth, despite what people thought in that regard. At those times, yeah, those are emails, yeah. So, nobody did various aspects at those times that I knew. I didn't have that luxury like certain people I knew. Like, for example, there was a female in reference to a group that I considered like family and tried to get my sympathy. Oh, you should feel bad for me, Lady Dori Belle. So let me understand. You have a whole bunch of people who are there to assist you, to help you right on the spot. You don't even have to, do all sorts of... No, I don't. Oh, so I'm supposed to... What? Well, just, it's not that big of a deal. I don't know, I think it is. What's it like to have all those people that, well, it's not enough. That was her words. It wasn't enough. And it's like, you are so lucky in comparison. And that was back in Austin. That was in 2010. And I told her, I said, I wish you would listen to me. Pay attention. Because, I don't have the luxury in the regard of what you have, Trish. I don't have that set of family, in the same way that you do. Your mom and your dad are willing to help you and your ex, whatever, baby daddy, whatever it is. Oh, what's that like? Your whatever, believe you. Oh, what's that like? What's that like? When you went to court, you had a whole bunch of individuals that were right there, that were holding your hand, getting you to feel like, letting you know how important you were. What's that like? So these are some ideas that I came up with. I sent this to it was a lot more in detail in the first edition, but different ideas and stuff that I had sent out to current President of the United States of America. And the varying law enforcement and Library of Congress, and then it was returned from Library of Congress because LegalZoom told me that I couldn't have certain things in there to be registered. Not knowing the law firm was a part of LegalZoom, and LegalZoom being based in Austin. In 2013. So, you know, I hoped a whole bunch when I had, or, well, I should say 2014. 2014 was when getting that aspect in the return. So, yeah, I am me. My original YouTube account was through my original email address through Gmail, but because I can't get into it because of, you know, my own issues and a whole bunch of other crap. Yep. So, there it is. Did what I could, and then, because I was hoping that when my daughter was old enough to reach out to me, and all that. However, I've received a few text messages, the irony in regards to what my ex-sister-in-law, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, her daughter, Brianna Marie Lopez, had done in regards to the voicemail. I hope that I wasn't lied to in that aspect of that would be very bad, because there is the aspects of what happens in that regard subconsciously. It's better to tell me the truth instead of beating around the bush. Just say, it's safer for everyone in that regard. subarachnoid hemorrhage, and subconscious. It's an ironic aspect of the root word when you think about it. That being said, thanks for tuning in. Comment, share, all that stuff, my official YouTube channel.